church has two, the church itself and the Inquisition, which was more powerful than all of them together, because the Inquisition could get anyone, anybody, even the king or the pope, and question them.
Wow.
That's what they were to do. The top of the hill, the highest of Cartagena, 148 meters, La Popa.
La Popa?
Yes. The stern deck, or the poop deck of boats, because that's what it looked like.
Oh, the stern of the ship.
Right.
It does look like that. Interesting.
La Popa.
La Popa.
So, from their top, the view over the city is amazing. I already told you the reasons. On top, we have a monastery built in 1600s, exactly in 1604, probably the oldest of the city.
Yeah.
We know it's not the oldest. I remember there are a couple now that are from 1600, actually from 1500s. We will see them around. And this is the fortress of the Claw. And if you come this way, you will have a view also over the biggest fortress ever built by Spanish in the Americas, El Castillo de San Felipe de Barajas.
Oh, right there?
Watch that hole you have over
Yes.
there. Come this way. That hole is where the water of the rain was collected. By the way the building is made, the water of the rain flows all the way into this siphon and goes down through a canal, which is underground built over the fortress, and finishes on the cistern that we have right here. There's not only this, there is another cistern on that place,
Oh, I see.
and some other around the fortresses of the city, because the water needed to be collected. You had no other source of water, source of clean water around Cartagena, because the closest river is the Magdalena River, and it's over 100 kilometers close to the north in Barranquilla, our neighbor city, and 115 kilometers to the southeast at Calamar. So those are the closest points.
Okay.
Spanish decided that they needed to connect the bay of Cartagena, where they used to bring the galleons to retrieve the gold, and they should connect it through the river by building a canal so boats could go inside, deeper into the country, and that would be easier to get treasures. And they managed to do it by 1670s. They finished El Canal del Dique. It was good for navigation, but bad for the Bay of Cartagena, because all the sediments coming out through the river invaded the water of the bay and changed its color. And since then, the sea of Cartagena, the sandy beaches are no longer white sand, they became gray sand.
Oh, wow. Wow. But it's just minerals from the...
Yes, it's just minerals.
Okay.
It's mostly the gray sand is because of the volcanic sand that flows from through the river.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Closer where the cannons are aiming, we have El Cabreros neighborhood. Come closer, take a look. You need to take this shot. And I will take a shot of you taking that shot.
Okay, so what is this?
El Cabrero neighborhood. El Cabrero was originally a farm that belonged to Mrs. Catalina de Cabreros. This lady inherited a big heritage since she widowed. Her husband died, and her husband was a well-recognized baron of those. No, it was count, the Count of Balot.
Spanish count.
Yes, Spanish count. Well, actually, no.
No?
His accountancy was his count title comes from Italy.
Oh.
Balocco is in Italy. This is because lots of Italian places that belong to the church will also be given to Spanish when they inherited them. Remember that by the kingdom of Charles V of Spain, Spain became one with all kingdoms of Europe and became like the Holy Empire, the most powerful country that ever existed in Europe. Spain, even more powerful than the Roman Empire.
Wow.
Spain managed to have lands at every continent around the world, and it became the empire where the sun never sets. And because of this, the shield of Charles V is an eagle that has two heads, representing that she watches the sun on the east as she watches it on the west. Look, El Cabrero there was a farm, but later, within the time, people started to live around there. It keeps the name El Cabrero because of Catalina de Cabreros. You have a red tent here, a red roof. That's the house of Rafael Núñez. Rafael Núñez is 4 times president of Colombia, twice governor of Panama, ambassador of Colombia in England and France, and author of the national anthem, author of the Constitution of 1886 that lasted until 1991. And best of all, he's from Cartagena.
Oh.
He lived there with his wife, Mrs. Soledad Román de Núñez.
Oh.
Rafael Núñez is known as the president of the regeneration because he finished the domination of the main classes that inherited the power from Spain and wanted not to give it to people. And that confusion produced that 60 years of the 19th century were spent at war in Colombia.
Spain was at war in Colombia.
No, not Spain. This used to belong to Spain.
Yes.
And we declared independence in November 11, 1811. We were reconquered in 1815.
Oh.
But Simón Bolívar will finish the control of the Spain around here in 1821. Since then, the country spent until 1930 9 years being the Great Colombia. Colombia was one along with Venezuela, Panama, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia together. Bolívar was the president during that time. But when he died, the country split it into all those countries I mentioned.
Wow.
So once it split it, those who remained in control in Colombia, they came from the Spanish classes and they kept controlling it, but they did not have anything to do with Spain. They kept it for their own.
Oh, I see.
And that means that people on lower classes could not claim for their rights. For example, slavery lasted in here until 1851. This is because since 1821, when Bolívar abolished it, until 1851, those who remained in control decided not to abolish it at all. So that's what I'm trying to say. Then, the remaining years of the 19th century make that there were lots of wars, and wars that were supported by the powerful countries of outside. England, France, Spain itself, the United States also, and others started to they supported the war by selling weapons.
Oh, yes, like they still do.
Not to mention that in the same time take advantage and get the resources. This is neocolonialism. Neocolonialism. Well, anyway, back to the geography of Cartagena. You see that from the sea, we have this. It's a canal, natural canal. It's better like a swamp out of marshes. It's a marsh. That's what it is.
Okay.
Known as el Caño de Juan Angola or el Caño del Ahorcado, the Huntsman Canal.
They throw bodies in there?
No, well, they had to once at wartime, the time of war, but they call it that way because on the times of Spain, when slavery was a business, the Count of Valdeollos, who was a lady, the lady Count of Valdeollos, she was a slave smuggler. How do they smuggle slaves? They used to buy the best slaves from Africa and make them reproduce over there.
Really?
And control the giving birth as if you were reproducing cattle. For example, there is a legend saying that they used to put blindfold the Africans and bring the man, make love to the lady, blindfolded too, and completely tied up around that she could not move, and then they would be separated away, so she will not know who's the father of his child, and the child will never meet his father. Likely, probably because when they grow up, they may look. It's hard to say that they will find and see that they're similar, but anyway, that was not likely expected to happen. They will be separate forever. Probably from here, brought other places and be sold. Little Africans could be sold and be taught to be slaves since child. And the slavery business was hard around this land. It's something that we cannot pretend we don't see. That happened. It was bad because of being a slavery, but it also brought us the beautiful culture from Africa. It's what we love the most in here. I'm not much close to an African resemblance, but by color scheme probably I'm a little more indigenous descendant on my mixing of my history of my family. But my grandfather was more likely African, and from him we inherit lots of African culture that we have from him, and lots of people do around Cartagena. This is because the city, which is over 1 million inhabitants, watch out, has about an 18% pure African descendant population, and a 60% of mixed population, in which the 45% has over African blood on their veins.
Yeah. Wow.
So the Africans had to claim for their independence, for the abolishing of the slavery, and lots of them were they had to go fight on their own, being part of uprising groups that inherit today the guerrillas.
Cartagena has the first free African community.
So you got Palenque.
Palenque. San Basilio
De Palenque.
de Palenque.
You like one?
Oh no, gracias.
It's okay. San Basilio de Palenque is the first free of slavery town in the Americas. It's not too far from here.
It's not?
No. It's about 45 minutes away
Oh,
by car.
yeah.
You get there to that village and you get to Africa. They keep lots of their African traditions, but they are struggling against modernity, who wants to establish their modernity traditions. So that has been inevitable. And because of that,